So what a start it was for Manchester United and Manchester City. We're only 5 games in, but they have been very impressive, identical records. Is the Premier League title heading back to Manchester, Andy?
It certainly wouldn't surprise me. I think United will be really close this year, Dave. I do. City clearly have an amazing squad, and when they play at their very best, they produce a level of football probably that few can get close to. I just think over course and distance, I think Jose's teams have always been ultra competitive, and I think this United team, probably if they had another centre half, if Victor Lindelof or somebody else had come in and really hit the ground running, but I do feel that United will be very, very close next year.
Is it too early, Ollie, for this kind of talk?
Well, I think some of us got burned last year with Man City after that fantastic start that they made. And I remember being at the game against United, actually, when I thought City were absolutely magnificent and writing some very florid stuff about how it was the dawn of a new era in the Premiership and then in the Premier League, and then City, you know, went downhill a little bit from there. So I think it is early, but I still find it very hard to see beyond them and United. I think the team that beats United, that finishes above United, will win the league, and I think that team will be City.
That's nailing your colours to the mast pretty early.
Yeah.
It's actually City's worst start since 2014.
Wow.
Did you know that? That's a great stat today from Duncan Alexander, isn't it? Because they won all of their first 5 games the last 2 seasons. Who do you like watching more?
Probably, as Andy said, probably Manchester City. I think when they start to pass the ball and move the ball around, I just think it's got that kind of Barcelona feel, obviously Pep Guardiola, that kind of Barcelona feel, pass and move and just keeping the ball and playing out from the back. And I just think they're so good at it that I think they can just wear teams down. And I think even in games where they might not have as much of the ball, I just think the way they can just keep passing it, eventually something's going to open and they're going to finish you off, especially with the strikers they've got in Jesus and Aguero. I just think they create enough chances to win games, which is why I think they're probably the strong fit in this league.
He'd been critical at times, Pep, about the amount of chances they're creating and the ratio of goals they're actually knocking in. And I can understand that. I watched them a lot last year and they did create so many chances without capitalising, without really taking full advantage. I personally just wonder if they are, and even though I wasn't quite sure whether those two would absolutely gel as a pair. Now, clearly, look, at the weekend running, you know, they didn't look too shabby at all. They looked very good. I still have my doubts whether they're a different type of striker, short.
I also think that they, to that point about whether they would gel, that I think Guardiola absolutely loved that goal against Liverpool when Aguero was through. You know, anybody would have bet money that he would have taken that himself, but he squared it for Jesus. You know, I think Guardiola loved that. He was asked about that in the press conference afterwards. It meant a lot to him, that, and I think that's a sign of the kind of influence that he has and the way that he wants. He's sort of totally uncompromising about the style, and I think that's why people love watching City, because you love watching kind of unselfishness like that.
Did that moment surprise you? You would never have passed in that situation, would you?
No, I would have, because just I think it was probably more nice to see, because obviously Aguero had been left on the bench a few times as well, so it's probably nice for the manager to see that he's still a team player. I mean, he could have gone in there, done it for himself, tried to score, but obviously the pass was there to give it to Jesus and he scored it, and that showed, to be fair, that he's not all about himself, he's about the team, and I think that's probably what pleased Guardiola more than anything, is that he did that.
Saw Franny Lee today saying this is the best football he's ever seen from a City team, but Ollie, would this be a different way of winning the Premier League, the way that City are going to try and do it?
Well, I think so, up to a point. I mean, I think, as I said earlier, there's an old adage about defences win titles, and I think if City win the title this year, it'll be their forward players who do it for them, and I think that the danger for them is that they still, you know, in the game against Liverpool, they looked a little brittle until they went ahead, and then obviously Liverpool had Mane sent off and it was plain sailing after that. They still looked a little brittle.
You're right, Ollie. Mo Salah in that if Otamendi plays the left side of 3, he looks like against a good team he's going to get hurt. In that position there, he can't run. He's not quick, and in that game, Mo Salah, had he have been a little bit more ruthless with his finishing or his final ball, then the start of that game, look, the end of it would have probably finished the way it did, but the start of it could have been very different.
15. Yeah, go on, Ollie.
No, I was just going to say I was very sceptical when they signed Walker actually for that fee. Not because I don't like Walker as a player, but just because I thought that showed it was just a sign of the madness of the fees. But I have to say, the games I've seen him play, I've been really impressed with the start that he's made, actually. And OK, the fee's the fee, but I mean, all the fees are mad at the moment. So I've kind of changed my mind about that. I mean, if you're going to pay silly money, City just pay what they want. And I think he's been excellent. And again, if you're looking at the defence, if you're looking for signs that City can win the league, you don't just look at what they're doing going forward, because we all know how potent they can be going forward. But at the back, I think Stones has made a good start. I mean, I love watching John Stones play, and I think Walker's made a real difference too. So, I mean, I think there are real signs of hope there for City.
To be fair as well, I thought if they'd have got Johnny Evans as well, just to play that left of the three, I think that'd have been a massive signing for him, because as Andy was saying there about Otamendi's pace, I think Johnny Evans doesn't get enough credit in that department, that he's quick and he's good on the ball, he can play, and I think that's exactly the kind of defender that Man City would have needed to obviously the defensive frailties, to be fair, because he's a proper defender that can also play, and I think Guardiola obviously saw that in him, and that's why he tried to sign him.
Do you, amongst your teammates at Derby, talk about City amongst yourselves and admire the football they're playing?
Yeah, in the change rooms, and obviously on the Monday morning we'll talk about RWC City and some of their players. And to be fair, it's funny because a lot of the defensive guys will talk about the back four, and like a lot of the time it's been maybe mistakes and stuff that Man City have been making. But going forward, we always talk about like David Silva and Aguero and players like that. And to be fair, we're fortunate we've got a physio at our club who was at Man City for 15 years, so he talks about the certain players and you can ask him questions, and he'll always talk about how good some of the players are and what they're like and stuff.
The point I wanted to make, Andy, was that they scored 15 goals this week, and I saw today that the average distance those goals have been scored from is 11 yards.
Yeah.
They're getting into the box, they're getting in good areas.
I think the accuracy we've seen so far this season, David Silva, De Bruyne, those clever little 15, 20-yard passes, Darren, that they're finding the two strikers with. And you're right, they're taking their shots from 8 and 10, 11 yards out, whatever. They're so accurate, the movement is so good, the passes always played with the right weight and at the right time to give the strikers every chance to hit things first time. They've been very good.
What about the power of Manchester United, though? You talked about winning a Premier League title with the best defence. Could you argue that is United?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, you're right. I mean, I think they have got power, and I think that, like everybody else, I was very surprised when Chelsea sold them Matic, because I think one of the things I thought about Matic at Chelsea was that when Matic arrived at Chelsea, the second time, I suppose, he just gave them a balance. There was something, it just seemed to be like a final piece of the jigsaw at Chelsea. And felt to me exactly the same when he arrived at United. He was exactly what United needed. And I'm a huge fan of his. And I think, again, I was surprised. I know Chelsea must feel they've traded up with Bakayoko, but that time will tell. I mean, he'll have to be pretty good to exceed what Matic did. So, I think I prefer the way City play, but you can never discount Mourinho and United. Mourinho knows how to win titles, and
he'll do whatever it takes to win.
Yeah.
That's the difference. I think Jose will always do absolutely whatever it takes to win.
Well,
whoever that means leaving out, whoever that means playing in whatever position. I think he'll always, over this 10 months, I think he'll always be right in there with this particular United team.
You were there yesterday, Andy. You saw this trend again of scoring late goals. 50% of United's goals this season have been scored in the last 10 minutes.
Yep.
What does that tell us?
Well, again, that they've got that ruthless nature to what they're doing, which is always very important to have. The game could have been over a lot more. I mean, listened to Ronald Koeman afterwards and felt maybe the scoreline flattered United a little bit. I'm not so sure. I think if Lukaku scores 2-0, and I think the scoreline could have even been more than it was. Yeah. Certainly Everton had some chances and they missed some chances, and they could have got back in the game at 1-0. But I think United showed that they've got that bit that Fergie's teams always had. It wasn't a case of getting out there with a 2-0 defeat. You was always worried about coming out of Old Trafford getting beat 5. Mm.
I'm also as guilty as anybody as sort of typecasting Mourinho as pragmatic and a little bit dwarf, certainly compared to, say, Guardiola's sides. But, any side that's got Mkhitaryan in it, has, Mata playing regularly, then, you can't, and are scoring goals for fun as well. You can't just dismiss them as dull and pragmatic all the time. I mean, I totally agree with you, Andy, that they will get a job done, and I think when the time comes, they will be more adept at shutting a game down. But they're good to watch too.
They're good, of course they are. They've got very, very good players, excellent players.
But do we know yet? They've got Liverpool, Spurs and Chelsea in the next 6, Manchester United. Is that when we're going to find out if they really are contenders?
Yeah, I'd say that's when we're going to find out how good they really are. I mean, I don't know how long Pogba's out for, but I think he started off the season really, really well. But as you said, they are a big, powerful side. But I think with them next 6 games coming up, that's going to tell us an awful lot about his squad and how good they actually are. Because as you've seen, obviously, so far this season, they've been walking through teams, battering teams 4-3-4s. Fulham's been they've not really been tested, other than probably Everton, the start of the second half where Rooney had a couple of chances and it could have been a lot closer. They've not really been tested. So I think with these games coming up, I think we're really going to find out how good they actually are.
Yeah, and he doesn't like to lose those games. Mourinho,
I remember last year.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't like to get beat in those big games that really matter. If those games are tight and if there's nothing much in it and he has to walk away with a point, I think whether it's home or away, he'll do that.
Yeah.
Who's the biggest threat to them, Darren? To United and City?
I'd say Chelsea right now. I mean, there's obviously a lot gone on at Stamford Bridge, obviously with the whole Diego Costa thing and stuff like that, but they've still managed to get results without playing as probably as well as they like. Hazard's not been fit, and I think obviously he's probably one of the best players in the Premier League, if not the best when he's on form. So I think Chelsea's definitely the biggest threat. I think they're getting players, like I said, Bakayoko, I think he's now starting to get fit, and I really like him. I think he was brilliant at Monaco last season. So they're starting to get players fit, getting players back, so I think they're going to be a real test. Morata looks like he's now adjusting to the Premier League a bit better, so I think they're going to be a real force.
Do we agree?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I also, Darren mentioned Morata there. I mean, I really like Morata. I think he's a lovely player. I do wonder if Chelsea, if the difference this year might just be that Chelsea will miss Diego Costa, because I think he was a big player for them in our league, and I am aware that I'm discounting Chelsea early, but I just think the loss of Diego Costa, I think it might take Morata a little bit of time to acclimatise. I mean, I think he's made a great start, and he's a lovely player, but I just think they might miss Costa. I think that might be a difference.
Yeah, I'd love to see Liverpool. I do enjoy watching them play. When I was at the Arsenal game at Anfield, and everybody was very quick to point fingers at the Arsenal team and that performance. But I tell you what, Liverpool were brilliant, and I love it when they go about their football in the way that they do, fast, 100 mile an hour, foot to the floor, not worrying too much about what might happen, go and make something happen. I really enjoy watching them play, but they're just too unpredictable and just still a little bit too open unnecessarily at times.
Yeah.
Perhaps for you to absolutely turn around and believe that they're going to get over the line in perhaps some of those games that they should win.
Yeah, I'm with Andy there, to be fair. I really like watching Liverpool as well, but the same thing about Man City, to be fair, is the back four. I'm just not sure about Liverpool's back four. I mean, they've got some great players going forward. I mean, not to talk about Coutinho's not even come back yet, so they're really enjoyable to watch going forward. But I always just think against the top sides, like their back four against like Lukaku or Manchester City, they might just get unstuck.
But we're not mentioning Spurs, Arsenal?
Well, I think, again, I'd love to mention Arsenal, but it feels like Groundhog Day with them. I mean, I think there's a different result yesterday. I don't think anybody was expecting them to grind that one out against Chelsea, which was encouraging, and I think there were some very encouraging performances, but I still think they'll be 4th or 5th again. I'm not actually saying that as a criticism. I think that's again in terms of, I'm sorry, but if Arsenal fans, I know, believe they should be winning the league, but basically the money table doesn't often lie, and so generally speaking, the teams that pay the most money and pay the most wages win the league, and the table pans out like that. So
I'm not sure even Arsenal fans think they're going to win the league anymore, Ollie.